Okay, so now that our notes data is pointing to a user, we actually have to make the change in the notes controller in order to create new notes that are associated with the current logged in user and only display the notes that are associated with the current logged in user. In order to use that, we have to use an object called a UserManager. So in order to import the UserManager, we will create an object at the top of our notes controller called UserManager, and in angled brackets specify the user class that is associated with that UserManager, which is identity user, since we're utilizing entity framework, and underscore UserManager. I like to specify, or I like to use the underscore variable name for constants that are private in a class. And then we, via dependency injection, we will be passing in our UserManager. And we will say UserManager is equal to UserManager. So that we'll be able to access it in the actual code. Next, we will go to our create. And since we defined the UserManager already, we can access the user's ID by using the following line of code. String user ID is equal to underscore UserManager dot get user ID, and the user global variable will hold the, or that is in the controller object, will hold the current user that you're logged in as automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. And then we want to associate the new note that was passed in, user ID attribute, with the user ID. And yeah, that is it. So then when we create a new note, it will be associated with our user. That was just 4 lines of code. It's as simple as that. Let's see. Okay. Now play. And let's see the magic that we just implemented for newly created notes. I removed the read-only, by the way. Okay, so we're logged in as test@gmail.com. Let's go to notes, create a new note, let's see if this works. Hello, world, create. So we created the notes, and if we go back here, the notes is created. But let's see what's happening in the database. So we look at the notes tables data, and we view it, and as you can see, the note that was newly created is associated with a user, the only user that we have, which is the test user. But even though we implemented that functionality to associate a new note with a user, we could still view all the notes of all users. So in our index action for our notes controller, we're going to add in a filter. After the notes table, dot where, and we'll specify a u is mapped to u.id. So we're getting the table's information, which is represented by a u, and then we're specifying what attribute we're trying to access in that table, which is specified by ID. That's equal to the name of the variable of the current user, the user ID of the current user. But we don't have the user ID in this action. So we have to copy this line of code where we get the current user, logged in user's ID. And define a user ID variable to hold that value. And then we paste it in. And then it gives us an error. And that's because we're pointing to user ID rather than the ID column, which is the primary column of notes table, rather than the user ID record, which is the value of, which is actually the foreign key pointing to the true user's ID. Okay, so we did that, and now let's test whether our changes have worked. So let's play. And our application starts up. So we go to Notes, and we could see the note we created previously. Let's create another one for the sake of creating another one. New note, note, create, go back to Notes, new note that was created. Let's log out just to make sure, register a new user, test2@gmail.com. Enter in the password, create the account. Now we'll go to Notes, and it asks us to log in. Log in, and we don't see any notes. So let's try creating a note for test2 user. Test2, test2. We created it, go back to Notes, and as you can see, the note has been created. But we cannot see the first test user's notes. And just to do one final check, we'll go to see if the initial user's notes are still there. Log in as the test user instead of the test2 user. Now check the notes. And as you can see, we could see the notes created by the test user, but not the test2 user. And from the test2 user's account, we can see the notes created by the test2 user's account, but not the test user's account. So now we have successfully implemented the functionality to complete our first task, which was to restrict the viewing of notes to being the notes that the user that is logged in created, not any other users. So that is the end of this exercise, and then we'll be moving on to the next task and the next exercise.